The topic around the miracle strategy called velocity banking is almost all geared around a flawed concept that amortized interest is more expensive than simple interest. In today's training, I'm only going to focus on this topic so you can fully understand why it's wrong. But before we move on, I ask that you like and subscribe to my channel to support the channel so we can keep making more and more free content to help you live a life that lights you up. Now, let's get into the topic of amortized interest. So to first understand amortized interest, you have to understand the velocity banking strategy. The first time I heard of velocity banking was in an education called Renata's, which I happened to own at the time. Now they brought in an instructor from Hawaii that taught a strategy called sweep strategy. The founder of the business was explaining what we know today as velocity banking strategy. Now in the training, they taught us about several reasons that banks were bad and trying to rip us off. The main reason was that simple interest is cheaper than amortized interest. They use what is now seen all over these trainings on the internet. So let's pop over to the slide. And so this is what we've seen all over the internet. They use this very similar example, and they have this little reference to Fahrenheit versus Celsius degrees, implying that amortized interest is different than simple interest. And then they go through all of this complicated numbers trying to explain this away. And if you haven't watched my other training, I show mathematically that this is all a bunch of nonsense, right? The interest calculation is the same. Eventually, this instructor left and Renata's created their own velocity banking classes. They added their own spin to the sweep strategy and rebranded it as velocity banking. Now, the next part is extremely important to understand because it will help you understand the explosion in the topic called mortgage acceleration and debt reduction using velocity banking. And in the name of full disclosure, I actually own the Renatus education and was an independent contracted marketer for them. Now, this is a fancy way of saying I made money selling the education, which eventually included the velocity banking classes. Now, it was presented to us as a strategy that could help pay down debt and build wealth. They brought in tax attorneys and other financial professionals to support the strategy and had huge buy-in. Now, these individuals eventually went out and started promoting it as a financial strategy and sold the classes to people. Again, in full disclosure, I was one of those people, but then a friend of mine challenged me on the idea. Now, he was a moneylender and understood math and finance very well. We sat down and did the math, and most importantly, the logic to the argument that simple interest is cheaper than amortized interest. What we found was that it was all wrong. In fact, I looked into this word amortized interest and found it doesn't even exist as they explained. What does exist is interest that is amortized over time. Now, the word amortized means to reduce or pay off a debt with regular payments. Put another way, it means to spread over time. So let's take a look at the payment formula to better understand what this all means. Okay, so we have two different calculations here. We have what we call amortized interest, as many people refer to, and then we have a simple interest line of credit. Now, let's look at the simple interest line of credit. They have three things here: the principal, the interest rate, and time in years. And you can see here, if we wanted to calculate what interest would cost on $100,000, we would take $100,000 times 6%, right, divided by, we're going to call it 12 months, right, divided by 12 months. And so that would give us $500. That's how simple interest is calculated. Now over here, this looks much more complicated. But the biggest thing we need to understand is that this fancy payment formula is simply asking the question, what is the payment amount that would result in you paying off the loan in 30 years? If that was the actual number of payments, right? We're using 30 for the example. That is all this is asking. And people misunderstand this and think that it's a fancy calculation to calculate amortized interest. And it is not. It is used to calculate payment. One payment that can be paid over the number of years that will eventually pay this off. In this example, there's only one difference between simple interest payment and amortized interest, and that is the amortized loan payment is forcing you to pay down principal each month so that the loan eventually gets paid off in the required amount of time. Now, the calculation of the interest portion is the same as the simple interest calculation. So I'm going to hop over to the amortization schedule, and we're going to show you exactly what that looks like, because this is too complicated to do here. We need an actual software to do that. And so, but remember, the simple interest is principal times rate times time. So let's hop over to the amortization schedule that I found on the internet for you guys. So you guys can look this up. The link is below. Any amortization schedule will do. But what I want you to see here is the $100,000 at 360 months at 6%. All right. The payment is $599.55. And what we have to look at here is the total cost of interest in month one. It's $500. It is the same as the calculation of simple interest. And so all we're doing is forcing the person that is making the payment here, we're forcing them to pay down principal. That's all we're doing. And what happens is eventually this will be paid down in 360 months. And that's really important, because that fancy formula that I just showed you, that is all it's doing. It's asking what is one consistent payment that can be made that over 30 years it will pay down to zero. That is all it's asking. Anybody that's saying amortized interest is costing more doesn't understand what they're saying. I want to show you something really important here. We can see that the longer we make the term of the loan, the lower the monthly payment gets. Now, it will eventually reach $500, which is the same as the simple interest calculation. And so let's make this 500. So we're going to make the months 500 here, and you can go check this out yourself. So what happens is you can see that the monthly interest right here in the second column starts approaching 500. And if we go to, we're gonna run this out to 5,000 just to prove a point. You can see it's because it's so far, right, out in time that every payment is $500. The same interest as the simple interest, because the formula used to calculate the interest in an amortization schedule is the simple interest formula. And if you can understand that, it will prove that there is no such thing as amortized interest. There's an amortized schedule, right? Two totally different things. Now, this is black and white proof that there's no such thing as amortized interest in the way that it is explained. Instead, we have interest that is amortized over time, which is calculated using the simple interest calculation. Now, it is my belief that almost all the people promoting this or similar strategies don't fully understand or know that it is incorrect, and it is just a lack of education like it was for me. Now, I hope these individuals will watch my free trainings, download my free spreadsheets, and hop on my free weekly calls so they can better understand what they're saying, and most importantly, what they're selling. And hopefully we can show them how to properly implement the velocity banking strategy, which I'm working on creating a training right now for everyone. Now, with that being said, I know Renatus knows it's wrong because I've personally sent them emails and video explanations about it, and they agreed with me. Yet they continue to sell it and are still selling it today. Now, I'm speaking up about this now because I've left Renatus because I could no longer sell their product in good faith knowing what I know now. Now, I was even hesitant to create these training videos on the topic because I know people who are still selling it and understand the potential impact of having the truth revealed. It is at this time that I thought back to why I got into finance in the first place, and it was to help people. Now, specifically the blue collar and middle class people just trying to create a better life for themselves, like my friends and I were and we have done. Now, if I don't say something, people will continue to get burdened with high interest, simple lines of credit, thinking is cheaper than amortized interest. Now, the internet shows the wins, but I've seen the horror stories no one wants to talk about because they're too scared or embarrassed. And so I'm saying what I'm saying for those people. The world of finance is very complex, and I don't claim to have all the answers. But I am working on creating trainings like this to help you understand what I do know. So I hope you enjoy, because there's a lot of personal impact for sharing the truth. But I'm also willing to go through that so we can make sure you and everyone else is getting the correct information. I'm also giving away all of my masterclasses and a weekly mastermind along with the software to help people understand finance and how to make more money and have a better life. Now, I invite you to join me in my free school community to learn more and even join me on my free weekly mastermind, where where you can ask all the questions that you want. We offer entry-level paid masterminds all the way up to done-for-you financial consulting. So keep watching as I'm releasing additional trainings on this and other strategies to help you understand what is best for you. Cheers, and thanks for your time and attention.